welcome to the after show of Markers and Milestones on July 31st, 2023. We had the privilege of speaking to Doug Coupland. Oh, did I get the name wrong?
Dan Coupland.
Dan Coupland, thank you, from Hillsdale College. He's the Dean of the Masters in Classical Education program there. And we would love to have a brief conversation reflecting on some of the things we heard and learned tonight. So welcome to the after show of Markers and Milestones, where we seek to explore opportunities open to young men and women beyond their traditional college route, all from a Christ-centered perspective. So thank you for joining us in this after show. So Lee, any first thoughts?
Well, one, he was a very interesting person. He struck me as all the classicalists I've ever met, especially Christian ones. They just know so many things about so many different topics. And I thought maybe a point we need to clear up is that Hillsdale does offer the Master's in Classical Education, and we offer through Classical Conversations and SEU the Master's in Classical Studies. I think it's kind of an arbitrary name, and a lot of times when you have a master's of classical studies, it actually just means you're studying languages, classical languages and the ancients. For us, it really means more of a classical education like it did for him. So I wanted people to hear what they were what Hillsdale's offering under that title, because if you go to look at other universities, that's not what you're going to hear or find out about. So it's a little different.
Right. So one, I really appreciate that definition, because as classicists, definitions rule, or even as debaters, definitions rule, right? So we really do want to know what definitions we're working with. I really appreciate that. One of the interesting things is that he is super interesting, and Christ-centered worldview in his life, absolutely. As a Christian parent who would send my kids to a Christian school, I felt I would have a need to ask a few more questions about how your Christ-centered worldviews applied in this context, based on the explanations we've gotten. And any college that's labeled as Christian, I would say parents and students need to learn to ask some questions to make sure we're not just in the hallway, as he used the C.S. Lewis example, or we aren't just saying, hey, the received Western tradition is Christian enough. And that's where I'm not sure where the lines are. I'd have to ask questions at the university level. I'd have to interview people there as a parent or as a student to find that out.
Yeah, and even though Hillsdale does claim to be Judeo-Christian, and that's why he was a little bit cautious, because they aren't explicitly a Christian college, so he was being honest. But even if he did claim to be a Christian college, I don't think what you said changes anything. You really need to dig. There's a lot of Christian colleges in name that aren't an actual, and that they don't have your child's hearts. And it's just the longevity of their soul and what their purpose is. They're still working very much in a status mindset for, formation for career rather than for eternity.
Right. And it doesn't mean that what they're doing doesn't have value. But since we're talking about Christ-centered worldview, I'm really glad you said that. And, I'm really glad Jack Burns came on at the very start of our podcast as a Christian college student, said, hey, I find 3 kinds of Christian professors, even at a Christian school. So if you're wondering what you can find and some good questions to ask or what your child can observe, go back to that Markers and Milestones. Well, I don't really have much else to follow up on, Lee, about that conversation with him, unless you do, but I do have one more thought before we close our little after show here.
Yeah, so I guess the only comment that I had is that Hillsdale has a really good reputation, and our families have been pretty happy there. They've been very happy there. I can't think of much complaint. But Hillsdale's like all the other universities right now. Boy, are they struggling to try to figure out how this new generation that doesn't quite have the godly background we might have had as Christian capital. Wokeism and things like that. They're creeping in everywhere, and Hillsdale's doing a great job battling it. Just like you said about even Christianity, also all kinds of other values. And that's why I think it's important to meet someone like Dean, to know that he's designing the curriculum. He's going to be looking for ways to make sure his Christian worldview is there. But it's almost scary for a lot of parents to send their kids off to college these days, and we want to highlight a place where we think it's relatively safe and a good spot to go.
Right. And I also appreciated us highlighting that. And again, we were talking about a master's program. So again, remember, our markers and milestones go not just the first year out of high school, when they leave your homeschool, they leave your classical Christian school. Many of us have markers and milestones all throughout our life, retooling, retraining, moving on to the next act. But
Yes.
Lee, this isn't Christian at all, but it is pirate related. Did you know MIT has a pirate certificate for their people? It
I
involves
didn't.
it involves sailing and some other things that they're trying to encourage phys ed and physical development, not just academic development. So you can actually get a certificate of pirate at MIT. Little trivia for you.
That's really cool. I might have to go get that one. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a great
See you later.
evening.